Tensions are rising between the U.S. and Russia, set to begin high-stakes talks as fears grow that Russia could invade Ukraine. Russian and American diplomats meeting for a working dinner in Geneva tonight.
В своих целях начали заниматься промыванием мозгов.
Cheney, I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying.
Echoes of a new Cold War. The world stands on the edge once again. Two superpowers, divided by ideology, pride, and power, the United States and Russia, are locked in a new contest that feels hauntingly familiar. The Cold War may have ended decades ago, but its echoes are returning, louder than ever. The question now is, how did we get here, and what's coming next? Roots of rivalry, a century of competition. The rivalry between Washington and Moscow has defined the global balance of power for almost a century. A struggle not just for territory, but for the very soul of the modern world. When World War II ended, two giants emerged from the ruins, the United States and the Soviet Union. One stood for democracy, free markets, and individual liberty.
Russia, I think it's disgusting what they're doing. I think it's disgusting. This is Biden's war, it's not my war. But I said if I get in, I'll try and get the thing stopped. But I think what Russia's doing is very sad.
The other represented communism, state control, and collective ideology. The clash between them was inevitable, and the battlefield was everywhere. From the divided streets of Berlin, where a wall split the world in half, to the jungles of Vietnam, the mountains of Afghanistan, and the nuclear brinkmanship of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cold War played out like a global chess match, strategic, psychological, and relentless. Every move one side made was countered by the other, every gain shadowed by fear of annihilation. Then came 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union. The red flag fell over the Kremlin, and many believed the age of confrontation had ended. The world celebrated what was seen as the end of history, a final victory for Western democracy. But history, as always, had other plans. Out of the political chaos and economic collapse of the 1990s, a new Russia began to rise, proud, ambitious, and determined to reclaim its lost influence. Fueled by nationalism and a renewed sense of power, Moscow stepped back onto the world stage, reigniting the old rivalry that never truly died. The breaking point, Crimea, Ukraine, and beyond. 2014, the year the world's balance shifted. What began as political unrest in Ukraine quickly spiraled into one of the most defining moments of modern geopolitics. When Russia annexed Crimea, it didn't just seize a peninsula. It shattered the fragile illusion that the Cold War's divisions had ended forever. The move sent shockwaves across the globe. Western nations called it a violation of international law, and the response was swift: sanctions, isolation, and condemnation. But in Moscow's eyes, it was a matter of history and security, reclaiming what it saw as rightfully Russian, and pushing back against NATO's growing presence on its borders. Then came 2022, when the tension exploded into a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Cities once alive with culture and commerce became battlefields. The West rallied behind Kyiv, sending weapons, intelligence, and billions in aid. Russia, in turn, framed the war as a fight for its sovereignty, a struggle against what it perceives as Western dominance. But this isn't just a war fought with tanks and missiles. It's being waged in cyberspace, in global markets, and in the battle for truth itself. The conflict has redefined what modern warfare means, and reminded the world that peace, once lost, is not easily found. Strategic realities, the new battlegrounds. The US-Russia conflict today is not just about tanks and missiles. It's a war of data, resources, and strategy. Military front. Russia modernizes its arsenal with hypersonic weapons and nuclear deterrence. NATO deploys forces closer to Russia's borders than ever before. Cyber front. From pipeline hacks to election interference, cyber warfare has become the new front line. Economic front. Sanctions cripple Russian trade, while energy dependence gives Moscow leverage over Europe. Analysts call this a hybrid war, where every tool from propaganda to finance becomes a weapon. Global ripples. The world reacts. This rivalry isn't just between two nations anymore. It's reshaping the entire global order. The standoff between Washington and Moscow has rippled far beyond Europe's borders, creating new alliances, divisions, and uncertainties. NATO, once seen as a Cold War relic, is now more united and powerful than it's been in decades. The addition of Finland and Sweden to its ranks symbolizes a dramatic shift. Even neutral nations no longer feel safe sitting on the sidelines. On the other side, China has drawn closer to Russia, forming a growing axis of resistance against Western influence. Their partnership isn't just about trade or military cooperation. It's about challenging the global dominance of the United States and reshaping international power dynamics in their favor. Meanwhile, nations in the global south, from Africa to South America to Asia, find themselves caught in the middle. They're carefully balancing relationships with both camps, unwilling to choose sides but determined to safeguard their own interests. Today's world is no longer defined by two superpowers locked in opposition. It's a multipolar world, where multiple nations compete for influence, resources, and survival. But with that complexity comes volatility, and a future that's more unpredictable than ever before. Voices of authority, expert insights. As tensions rise, the world stands on a knife's edge. Former diplomats caution that a single miscalculation, a misunderstood move, or an unintended escalation could ignite a crisis with catastrophic consequences. The delicate web of communication channels and peace treaties that once restrained the superpowers is fraying fast. Arms control agreements, painstakingly negotiated over decades, are collapsing one by one, leaving nuclear arsenals dangerously unchecked. Military strategists warn that this erosion of trust could bring the world closer to the kind of confrontation unseen since the height of the Cold War. The threat today isn't just military, it's economic. Sanctions, energy disruptions, and financial instability have already sent shockwaves through global markets, fueling inflation and uncertainty from Europe to Asia. Economists worry that another global recession could be the next unintended casualty of this geopolitical standoff. And yet, amidst the growing fear, some voices remain hopeful. They believe that diplomacy, however strained, still has the power to steer humanity away from disaster. History has shown that even the darkest rivalries can bend, if dialogue replaces division and reason overcomes rhetoric. The question is, will the world's leaders act before it's too late, or after history repeats itself once again? What's coming next? Scenarios and future outlook. So what comes next? The future of global power is uncertain, but a few possible scenarios are already taking shape, each carrying its own risks and consequences. Scenario 1: endless confrontation. The rivalry between the US and Russia could harden into a long-term standoff, a new Cold War 2.0 defined by military buildup, cyber warfare, and propaganda. A digital iron curtain may rise, dividing not just territories, but entire information networks, economies, and alliances. The world could split into opposing blocs once again, each racing to outpace the other in technology, weapons, and influence. Scenario 2: selective cooperation. Despite deep mistrust, necessity might force limited partnerships, perhaps on nuclear safety, space exploration, or climate change. In this fragile balance, rivals cooperate where they must and compete everywhere else, walking a razor's edge between peace and provocation. Scenario 3: sudden shift. A sudden leadership change, internal unrest, or a global economic collapse could dramatically reset power dynamics, toppling old orders and creating new ones overnight. The truth is, no one can predict which path the world will take. But one thing is undeniable: the global balance is tilting, and the decisions made in the coming years will define an entire generation's future. The war of tomorrow. The USA and Russia stand at a crossroad that will define the 21st century. Whether we move towards conflict or coexistence depends on choices made today. This is not just their story, it's the story of our world. This is WarZone X. Stay alert, stay informed,